Chapter 1. Two Children, Two Worlds. From the outside, the Tran family seemed like a typical Vietnamese-American household living in the suburbs of San Jose, California. Their single-story home on Cedar Grove Avenue was modest but well-kept, with flower beds that Linda Tran watered every morning and a front porch where Daniel Tran read the newspaper in the evening. But behind that tidy facade was a quiet imbalance that had been growing for decades, an imbalance that had a name: Nathan. Emily Tran, the eldest child, was born 3 years before Nathan. From the moment she could stand on her own 2 feet, she had been expected to help. Help with the dishes, help with the laundry, help take care of Nathan. Her childhood was a blur of responsibilities. If she ever protested, her father would silence her with a single phrase: "Girls need to know their place. Nathan is the one who will carry on the family." Emily remembered those words too well. She had memorized them not because she believed them, but because she needed to survive them. She learned to study in silence, to never expect a birthday gift, and to smile through the ache of being invisible. By the time she turned 17, she had already been working part-time jobs after school just to save up for her future. She paid her own way through nursing school, while Nathan, charming, impulsive, and adored, got a brand new car as a high school graduation gift. Her mother, Linda, always brushed off the difference. "It's different for boys," she'd say while cooking. "You'll marry into another family anyway. Nathan will stay and look after us." But even that excuse wore thin when Emily noticed Nathan skipping college classes, gambling online, and showing up late at night smelling like alcohol and smoke. Yet the blame, somehow, always fell on Emily. She was too cold, too distant, too focused on her own life. So Emily learned to be silent. She moved out quietly at 22, renting a tiny studio apartment near Good Hope Hospital where she now worked as a full-time nurse. She didn't resent her parents, not openly. She still called every weekend, visited during Lunar New Year, and sent money when needed. But there was a space in her heart that she had quietly closed off, a door that no longer welcomed illusions. The final blow came on a humid summer afternoon when she visited home and found the paperwork laid out across the kitchen table. "What is this?" she asked, her voice calm but firm. Her father didn't even look up. "We transferred the house and all the business shares to Nathan." "It makes sense. He's the man," Linda added with a quick smile. "Don't worry, Emily. You're doing so well already. You don't need any of this." Emily stood there for a moment, her palms sweating despite her composed face. She looked at her brother lounging on the sofa, scrolling through his phone, completely indifferent. She didn't argue. She didn't cry. She simply nodded and walked out the door. That night, she sat by the window of her apartment, a single lamp casting a pool of light over her journal. She wrote only one sentence: "I have no inheritance, but I have peace." And she kept going. She poured herself into her work, working long shifts, tending to patients with a compassion that she had learned through years of being neglected. She joined yoga classes, went hiking alone, even adopted a senior cat named Mocha. She didn't need her family's validation. Or at least, she told herself that. But deep down, there was still a small ache. A quiet hope that maybe, just maybe, someday, they would see her. Not just as the girl who left, but as a daughter worth loving. Little did she know that day would come, but not the way she expected. Chapter 2. Assets in a Single Name. The news came not with thunder, but with silence. It was a Tuesday morning when Emily received a message from her cousin, Jenny, who worked at a small real estate office downtown. "Hey, just saw your family's house deed get updated. Everything's under Nathan's name now. Business too. I thought you should know." Emily read the message over and over, as if her brain had stopped understanding English. She stared at her phone on the break room counter while sipping bitter hospital coffee, her thoughts swirling louder than the overhead announcements. It wasn't a surprise. No, that moment had already happened weeks ago. When she saw the paperwork on her parents' kitchen table, the thick stack of legal documents all neatly signed, notarized, and bundled into folders. This message was just the final stamp. The confirmation. The official sealing of what had been unspoken for years. She wasn't part of the equation. Not in their plans, not in their hopes, not in their future. That night, Emily didn't call her parents. Instead, she went straight home to her studio apartment, fed Mocha the cat, and curled into her small but clean bed. The walls were quiet. No nagging. No comparisons. Just her. The next day, she made herself go back to work as if nothing had changed. She changed IVs, took vitals, comforted a sobbing widow. Her hands remained steady, but inside her chest, something shifted, a click, like a door locking itself shut. A few days later, she made the mistake of visiting home again. It was a sunny afternoon in San Jose, and the old cherry blossom tree in their front yard was blooming, casting pink shadows across the driveway. Emily rang the bell twice, and Linda opened the door with a surprised look. "Oh, Emily, you didn't say you were coming." "I was nearby," Emily lied, clutching a paper bag with Vietnamese pastries from her favorite bakery. "Thought I'd bring some bon to you for Dad." Her mother took the bag with an awkward smile and called out toward the living room. "Nathan, Emily's here." Emily stepped in and immediately felt like a guest in her childhood home. The living room had changed. A new TV, new recliners. Her mother had repainted the walls, and her father's old armchair was gone. Everything had Nathan's fingerprints on it, flashy, large, and utterly tasteless. Nathan emerged from the hallway wearing basketball shorts, shirtless, earphones in, and a smug grin on his face. "Sup," he said without even removing his earbuds. "Hi," Emily replied politely. They sat in stiff silence, her mother trying to fill the awkward air with small talk about the weather, sales at the grocery store, and how Nathan might open a smoothie business now. With the money from the house, he's got such potential. Linda gushed, clapping lightly. Emily tried not to flinch. "Sounds ambitious," she murmured, sipping her tea. But the final blow came when her father arrived from the store. He didn't greet her. He simply walked in, nodded slightly, and asked Linda what was for dinner. Then, mid-meal prep, he turned to Nathan and said, "When you open that place, put my name on it too. In case something happens, I want to make sure it stays in the family." Emily looked up. In the family. She swallowed the lump in her throat and stood up. "I have to go," she said, grabbing her bag. "You just got here," Linda protested, confused. "Work," Emily lied again. As she closed the front door behind her, the laughter of Nathan and her father echoed behind her, like a memory she hadn't asked to relive. She walked to her car, sat inside for a full 10 minutes, and cried. Not loud sobs, but quiet, shaking breaths. The kind of cry you let out when your heart is tired, not broken because it broke long ago. That night, Emily lit a single candle on her windowsill. She stared into the flame and whispered words only she could hear. "I forgive you, but I will not forget." She didn't mean revenge. She meant preservation. She meant that moving forward, she would give what she could, but no longer expect anything back. Not love, not approval, not even acknowledgement. Because in this family, only one name mattered. And it wasn't hers. Chapter 3. The Silent Wound. Time moved forward, but pain had its own clock. Emily returned to her routine with mechanical precision. Wake up at 6 a.m., feed Mocha, brew a cup of green tea, head to her shift at Good Hope Hospital by 7:30. 12 hours later, she came home to silence, reheated leftovers, and the quiet companionship of her cat. No one at work knew anything was wrong. To her colleagues, Emily was the calmest nurse on the team, efficient, professional, always the first to offer to stay late. But beneath her composed smile was a quiet exhaustion she didn't know how to explain. Because how do you describe the pain of being erased? She didn't cry often. But there were nights when she would stand by her small bathroom mirror and stare at her reflection for long minutes. Sometimes she would ask herself, not out loud but silently, if I disappeared tomorrow, would they even notice? The answer didn't change. And she had stopped expecting it to. One Friday evening, she received an invitation to a family dinner organized, of course, by Nathan. The text was brief. Family dinner Sunday. Dad says come. 6 p.m. Dress nice. No, hi. No, please. No name even. Just an obligation. Emily hesitated for an hour before replying. Okay. Sunday arrived too quickly. She wore a simple dark blue blouse, tied her hair in a low bun, and brought a bottle of wine she knew her father liked. The house looked bigger than she remembered, maybe because she now felt so small inside it. Nathan had invited a few of his friends, all loud and brash, and overly familiar. They greeted her with casual half-smiles and forgot her name 5 seconds later. Dinner was roasted duck, spring rolls, and stir-fried greens. Her mother was proud of the spread, smiling widely as she placed dishes down. Her father sat at the head of the table, drinking from a frosted beer glass. Nathan dominated the conversation. He talked about a new crypto investment, how he might travel to Miami next month, and a possible music venture with some friends in LA. Everyone nodded, laughed, even her parents, who acted as if every word was gospel. Emily sat in silence, chewing slowly, sipping water, occasionally nodding when someone glanced her way. She wanted to leave from the moment she arrived. Then came the moment that cut deepest. You know, her father said, lifting his glass, Nathan is the future of this family. Everyone chuckled and clinked glasses. Emily's fingers froze around her fork. Her mother added, if your brother succeeds, we'll all benefit. That's how families should work. Emily smiled politely. Of course. She stood and began clearing the plates, escaping to the kitchen. She washed each dish slowly, focusing on the feel of water, soap, and silence. Her mother walked in a few minutes later, drying her hands on a towel. Don't take it the wrong way, Emily. You've always been responsible. But Nathan, he just needs more help. That's why we give him more. Emily looked up, eyes calm but voice distant. And I guess I'm fine because I needed less? Linda hesitated. We didn't mean to hurt you. It's just tradition, you know. Emily didn't respond. She finished the last plate, wiped her hands, and turned off the light. Tradition doesn't mean fairness, she said softly, then walked past her mother and out the door. She drove home in the dark. No music, just the low hum of the engine and the sound of her own breath. That night, she sat at her desk and opened a new journal. On the first page, she wrote, "This is not resentment. This is remembering. So I don't keep waiting for what won't come." The wound was still there, but now it had a name. And that was the first step toward healing. Chapter 4. Deliberate Distance. Emily began to notice the shift not in how others treated her, but in how she responded to it. She stopped going to family gatherings unless explicitly asked. She no longer brought gifts when visiting, and she certainly stopped apologizing for her silence. The ache of rejection had not disappeared, but she had grown stronger around it, like skin thickened by years of sun. The phone calls came less frequently, mostly from her mother, and almost always when something was needed. "Can you help me check this insurance form? Do you know anyone who can look at Dad's blood pressure machine?" Nathan lost his ID again. "Can you drive him to DMV?" She helped, at first. Out of habit. Out of guilt. Out of something that still whispered family in the quiet spaces between breaths. But she learned. One Thursday evening, after working a double shift, Emily came home to find 10 missed calls from her mother. She called back immediately, worried. What happened? Oh, Linda said, casually. Your brother locked himself out of his apartment. I thought maybe you could go help. I live an hour away, Mom. Why didn't he call a locksmith? He doesn't want to waste money. But my time is free? There was a pause. Then her mother, sounding slightly hurt, said, You've changed, Emily. Emily exhaled slowly. No, Mom. I just stopped saying yes when I meant no. Click. That was the last time she got a casual request like that. Over time, Emily began drawing clear lines. She made a rule. If it wasn't an emergency, she didn't respond immediately. She used her vacation days for herself, booking solo weekend trips to Monterey, hiking in Big Sur, spending time in bookstores without anyone needing anything from her. And in those quiet moments, she rediscovered joy, not in grand gestures, but in the absence of burden. Still, part of her wrestled with guilt, that internal voice shaped by decades of being the good daughter, the responsible one, the fixer. Her therapist, yes. She had finally started seeing one called it survivor's shame. You adapted, the therapist said gently. You built your life on self-sufficiency because no one offered you support. That isn't selfishness. That's resilience. Emily blinked hard to keep the tears in. But why do I feel so guilty? Because part of you still believes love must be earned. That if you don't give, you don't deserve to receive. That line stayed with her. Echoed on nights when she made dinner for one or came home from the hospital too tired to even take off her shoes. One rainy afternoon, she visited her parents' house again, this time because her father had a minor fall and was resting. She walked in to find her mother folding clothes, the house unusually quiet. Nathan wasn't there. He moved out, Linda said casually. Some girl in LA. He says she's a singer. Emily said nothing. She brought her father his medications, checked his vitals, left clear instructions for rest. Before leaving, she paused in the doorway. I'm doing what I can, she said, almost to herself. Her mother looked up. We know. Emily nodded once and stepped into the drizzle outside, her umbrella opening like a small act of freedom. Chapter 5, called Only When Needed. The call came just past midnight. Emily had just finished her second shower of the day, scrubbing off the scent of antiseptics and latex from a brutal ICU shift. She was halfway into her robe, mocha curled at her feet, when her phone buzzed sharply on the nightstand. Unknown number. Her heart jumped. She answered immediately, her voice steady despite the hour. This is Emily. Hi. I'm sorry to call so late, a woman's voice said, hesitant. I'm Mrs. Delgado. I live 2 houses down from your parents. Emily's chest tightened. Is everything okay? Your mother fainted in the front yard. Your father was yelling for help, and we called an ambulance. They just left for the hospital. I found your number on a note stuck to their fridge. I thought someone should know. Emily didn't waste another word. She was out the door in 10 minutes. Hospital bag slung over her shoulder, hair still wet. The air outside was biting cold, but her mind ran hot with worry. Not once during the drive did she get a call or message from Nathan. When she arrived at San Jose General Hospital, her badge helped her bypass the chaos. She found her parents in the ER, her mother unconscious, but stable in one bed. Her father hunched in a chair next to her, hands shaking not from age, but from helplessness. Dad, Emily called softly. He looked up. For a moment, something like shame flickered in his eyes. She just dropped, he said, voice hoarse. 1 minute she was watering the plants, then she wasn't. Emily took over like instinct. She asked the nurse for charts, spoke to the doctor on duty. Ensured blood work and a CT scan were in process. All her training, all her years of being the responsible one, came flooding back like muscle memory. But this time, there was no pride in it. Just the quiet sadness of being the only one who showed up. Hours passed. The sky outside turned from black to indigo. Her mother eventually woke up, confused, groggy, frightened. Emily calmed her, explaining what happened gently, slowly, like speaking to a patient, not a parent. Not once did Nathan call. Not a text. Not a question. At 7 a.m., her father finally broke the silence. I tried calling your brother. He didn't pick up. Emily didn't answer. She was busy adjusting the oxygen mask on her mother's face. Later that day, when her mother had been moved to a recovery room and her father was napping in the chair, Emily stepped outside for air. She leaned against a vending machine, drinking from a paper cup of terrible coffee, and stared blankly at the linoleum floor. That's when the doctor who had treated her mother approached. You're a nurse, right? He asked kindly. Emily nodded. Yeah, I see you at Good Hope. Figured. You handled it like a pro. She gave a small smile. Thanks. Your mom's lucky. If she'd been left alone 10 minutes longer, things could have gone worse. Emily's jaw tensed. She's never alone when it matters, she said. Even if I'm the last person they remember. That evening, she sat in her car for a long while before heading home. The sunset painted the sky in soft orange and bruised purple. Her phone buzzed. Nathan. Heard Mom was in hospital. You good? Emily stared at the screen for a full minute. Then, she typed back. She's fine. You should check in sometime. No emoji. No warmth. Just facts. Because that was all she owed now. Only what was necessary. Only what was right. Nothing more. Chapter 6. Seeing her again after so long. Nathan Tran had not seen his sister in over 8 months. He wasn't avoiding her, at least. Not intentionally. Life just moved fast. There were parties, gigs, a short-lived stint with a music producer who vanished after taking his investment, and most recently, a girl named Mia who left him with an overdue apartment lease and a heart full of bitter music lyrics he never bothered to write. Then one morning, while scrolling through his Instagram DMs, he saw a message from someone he hadn't expected. Your mom was in the hospital last week. You should reach out. Jenny T. He stared at it. Reread it. Heart stammered. Then he remembered the text from Emily days earlier. Vague, short, impersonal. She's fine. You should check in sometime. He hadn't replied. Guilt wasn't something Nathan wore comfortably. It sat on his shoulders like a coat 2 sizes too small, tight, irritating, and easy to throw off. But something about the silence that followed stayed with him. No follow-up from Emily. No check-ins. Just absence. That's when he realized she'd finally stopped waiting for him to care. So he did the thing he always did when panic set and he drove. 2 hours later, Nathan was pulling into the hospital parking lot in San Jose. He didn't even call ahead. He walked through the glass doors in a hoodie and sunglasses, unsure if he was trying to look cool or just trying to hide. He asked for Linda Tran, and the nurse, after confirming with the doctor, pointed him to room 312. As he stepped into the room, it felt like walking into a life he had intentionally blurred. His mother lay sleeping in the hospital bed, for in her arm, her skin paler than he remembered. She looked small, fragile, older. His father sat by the window, staring out with eyes that had lost some of their usual edge. But it was Emily who turned around first. She didn't flinch, didn't smile. She just said, "She's stable, but she needs rest." Nathan stood frozen for a moment. "Hey," he said awkwardly. "I came as soon as I heard. That was 4 days ago." Her voice wasn't angry. It was just flat, detached. Like he was a coworker showing up late to a meeting that had already ended. Nathan looked down. "I didn't know it was this bad." Emily didn't answer. Instead, she picked up her bag and slung it over her shoulder. "I need to go. Long shift tonight." She walked past him toward the door. "Wait," he said. "Can we talk?" She paused, hand on the doorknob. About what, Nathan? I don't know. About everything. Emily looked at him for the first time, really looked. Not with resentment, not even with sadness. Just weariness. You can talk. But I don't know if I have anything left to give. Then she left. Nathan stood in the room alone. The only sound was the faint beeping of the monitor beside his sleeping mother. For the first time, he realized he wasn't the golden child anymore. He was just another person too late. Chapter 7. The only one who stayed. Emily didn't cry on the drive home. She had gotten good at that, holding everything in until the emotion simply evaporated into exhaustion. The sun had dipped below the horizon, casting a dull, orange glow over the freeway. But all she saw was a blur of lanes and taillights. The only thing clear in her mind was Nathan's face. He had looked smaller. Not physically, but spiritually. The swagger was still there. Sure, the hoodie, the careless tone, but it was hollow now. She'd seen it in his eyes. But Emily didn't feel satisfaction. She felt tired. That evening, back in her apartment. She sat on the floor beside Mocha, gently stroking the old cat's fur. The TV was on but muted, some cooking show flickering on the screen. She thought about how quiet her phone had been. Not from the hospital. Not from her father. Not from Nathan. No one calls the one who stays. They expect her to already be there. To do what needs to be done. To show up, speak gently. Solve the problem, and disappear before dinner is served. And she always had. But lately, she wondered, what if she didn't? What if one day she just stopped answering the phone? Would anyone call again, not for help, but just to ask if she was okay? That thought haunted her through the night. 3 days passed. Linda was still recovering in the hospital, under observation for her heart and blood pressure. Her condition had stabilized, but the doctors advised a long-term care plan, including regular monitoring, a strict diet, and reduced stress. Emily visited in the early mornings before her shift, always bringing a warm blanket, fresh fruit, or a gentle update. Her mother was responsive now, though frilier, and perhaps for the first time, grateful. Daniel, their father, had softened too. He stopped barking orders and started asking questions. Small ones, awkward ones, but still questions. Nathan, however, had not returned. Emily didn't bring it up. She didn't need to. One morning, while adjusting the bed rails, her mother asked, almost timidly, "Did you speak to your brother?" Emily nodded once. He came, briefly. Linda stared at her folded hands. He always meant well. He just didn't know how to be responsible. Emily tucked the blanket gently around her mother's legs. Maybe he was never asked to. Her mother blinked, the truth settling and quietly between them. "You were always the strong one," Linda said after a pause. "We depended on you too much. And gave you too little." Emily paused, fingers tightening around the blanket edge. "You gave me exactly what you thought I deserved." There was no bitterness in her tone. Only a calm resignation that came from years of self-reflection. Linda's voice cracked, barely above a whisper. "I'm sorry, Emily." Emily stood still for a moment. Then she sat on the edge of the bed, taking her mother's thin, wrinkled hand in hers. "I forgive you," she said softly. "But I've changed. I can't carry everyone anymore." Her mother nodded slowly, tears glistening in her eyes. "You shouldn't have to." For the first time in her life, Emily felt something shift. Not in her family, not in her mother, but in herself. She wasn't the daughter begging to be seen anymore. She was the woman who had stayed. And that meant something. Not to them. To herself. Chapter 8. Lost money, lost pride. Nathan sat alone in the back booth of a rundown diner off 3rd Street, swirling cold coffee in a chipped white mug. His phone sat on the table, cracked screen lighting up occasionally with spam calls and overdue notices. He didn't answer any of them. The waitress, a middle-aged woman with tired eyes, refilled his cup and gave him a kind look. "Need anything else, Han?" No. Thanks. He gave her a half smile he didn't mean. And she walked away without expecting a tip. It had been a rough few weeks. After his visit to the hospital, Nathan had returned to LA, thinking he could ignore the guilt the way he always had, with distraction. But Mia, his most recent girlfriend, had emptied their shared account and left with his laptop. His apartment manager had filed eviction papers. The crypto wallet he was so proud of? Locked, hacked, gone. In the span of 10 days, he had nothing left. He texted Emily once, "Can we talk?" But never followed up. Instead, he found himself back in San Jose, crashing with a high school friend who had long since grown out of the party scene and now worked at a car rental company. Even that generosity was wearing thin. That's how he ended up in this booth, broke, tired, and finally, honest with himself. Across town, Emily was in the middle of her hospital shift when her father called. She stepped out into the hallway, phone to her ear. "Nathan called me," Daniel said. "Says he's in trouble. Wants to come home." Emily leaned against the wall, eyes closed. "Home. Yes. Here. And I said he should call you." A pause. "Why would you do that?" Emily asked, surprised. Daniel sighed. "Because I don't know what to say to him anymore. I thought maybe you would. I'm not his mother." "No," Daniel said softly. "You're the only adult between the three of us." That stung. But it was true. That evening, Nathan showed up at their childhood home. He didn't knock. He stood outside for a long while, staring at the cherry blossom tree in the front yard, bare now, its branches thin against the evening sky. Emily opened the door before he could bring himself to press the bell. They stood there, facing each other for a long moment. "I lost everything," Nathan said quietly. "Money, apartment, friends." "I know," Emily replied. "I don't have anywhere to go." Emily crossed her arms. "You had everything once, Nathan. And you wasted it. You had them. You had the house. You had time." "I know," he whispered. "I'm not asking you to fix it. I don't want to be alone." There it was. The pride was gone. The mask was off. He wasn't the favored son anymore. He was just a boy, scared, tired, and empty. Emily studied him, not out of judgment, but out of habit. And for the first time in years, she saw her brother as someone who might be capable of learning, if only because he finally had nothing left to lose. "I can't take you in," she said, "but I can help you find a job, a place to stay. After that, you're on your own." Nathan's eyes shimmered. "That's more than I deserve." "Probably," Emily said. "But I'm not doing it for you." "Then, why?" She paused. "Because you're still my brother. And because this time, I'll help you stand, but I won't carry you." Nathan nodded, tears falling silently. For the first time, he didn't try to charm his way out of consequences. He just said, "Thank you." Chapter 9. Regret in the smallest things. The first morning Nathan started work at a local warehouse. Courtesy of Emily's help, he woke up on a couch that wasn't his, in a studio apartment that smelled faintly of old books and lavender. It wasn't Emily's place. She hadn't invited him that far into her life. Instead, she had connected him with a community shelter program she occasionally volunteered at. He was given a cot for 3 nights and then a shared rental with 3 other men, all trying to claw their way back from something. It was humiliating. And maybe that's why it finally started to sink in. The regret didn't come in one dramatic epiphany. It came in waves, small, painful waves that crashed during the most mundane moments. Like the time he reached for a glass in the cabinet and realized he hadn't washed it after using it. "Emily always did that for me," he thought, "even when I didn't say thank you." Or the moment he spent 30 minutes on hold with a bank customer service line, frustrated and overwhelmed. "Emily once spent her lunch break fixing my credit card payment errors." He remembered the day his mother collapsed. Not being there. Not knowing. not caring until it was too late. And then there was the time Emily showed up to his college graduation alone with a small gift he didn't even open. Their parents didn't go, but she did. He hadn't even said thank you. He had laughed with his friends and left her standing in the parking lot. That memory hit him hardest. Meanwhile, Emily sat by her mother's hospital bed, carefully adjusting the pillows and massaging her hands with lotion. Her mother was getting better. Still weak, still needing supervision, but able to eat, smile, even watch TV again. Linda turned to her daughter and asked, "How's your brother doing?" Emily hesitated. "Trying. I got him into a temp job. We'll see." Her mother nodded slowly. "He was always softer than we thought. Just good at pretending." "He was spoiled," Emily replied plainly. "That's not softness. That's being protected from consequence." Linda didn't argue. Instead, she reached for Emily's hand, something she hadn't done in years. "I know I don't deserve it, but thank you. For everything, even when we gave you nothing." Emily looked at her mother, her eyes calm. "You gave me strength. Just not the way you intended." Linda's lips trembled, but she said nothing more. That evening, Emily walked out into the hospital courtyard, letting the cool wind wrap around her. She sat on a bench under a lamplight, thinking. She remembered being 14, sitting in that same spot while her father yelled at her over the phone because she had forgotten to pick Nathan up from school. She had been at the library, studying for her biology exam. He never asked how the exam went. Back in his shared room, Nathan was writing his first resume. He didn't know what to put under skills. He hadn't held a job longer than 6 months, but he wrote, "Reliable under pressure. Learning to listen. Not afraid to start over." He smiled bitterly at the third one. Then he opened his phone and scrolled to Emily's contact. Text message. "I remember when you came to my graduation. I didn't say it then, but thank you." She didn't respond immediately, but when she finally did, her message was short. "You're welcome. One step at a time." And for the first time, he felt like that might be enough. Chapter 10. Forgiveness Isn't Reunion. Spring arrived quietly in San Jose. The cherry blossom tree in front of the Tran house bloomed again, its branches heavy with soft pink petals that swayed gently in the breeze. To anyone passing by, the house looked the same, but inside, everything had changed. Emily visited twice a week now, bringing groceries, reviewing her mother's medical charts, making sure her father took his blood pressure meds on time. She came, she helped, and she left. Efficient, respectful, distant. There were no more family dinners. No birthdays celebrated together. No warm conversations over tea. It wasn't coldness. It was clarity. One Thursday morning, as Emily folded laundry in her apartment, she received a knock at the door. Not a call, not a text, a real knock. When she opened it, Nathan stood there. Hair trimmed, clothes clean but simple. A canvas backpack slung over his shoulder. He looked healthier, quieter. He held a paper envelope in both hands. "I didn't mean to just show up," he said quickly. "I tried calling last night. Maybe you were at work." Emily nodded once. "Come in." He stepped into the apartment and paused, looking around at the small space she had made into a sanctuary. Light filtered through gauzy curtains. Books lined every wall. Mocha the cat regarded him suspiciously from the windowsill. "This place is nice," Nathan said. "Peaceful." "It's mine," Emily replied simply. They sat down at the table, and he slid the envelope across to her. "I got my first real paycheck from the warehouse. It's not much, but I wanted to pay you back for the rental deposit you covered. And maybe just show I mean what I said." Emily opened the envelope. It was exactly $200. She didn't need the money, but she kept the envelope. "You didn't have to," she said. "I did," Nathan replied. "Not because you asked. Because it's right." Silence settled between them, not awkward, just honest. Then Nathan cleared his throat. I keep hoping one day you'll say we're okay again. Like, you and me. Emily looked at him carefully. We're not enemies, she said. But we're not what we were. And we may never be. Nathan lowered his eyes. Because I messed it up. No, she said. Because too much happened. And I changed. She stood and poured them both glasses of water. No coffee, no tea, no lingering warmth to suggest a family reunion. Forgiveness, she continued, isn't about going back. It's about moving forward without carrying the weight. Nathan swallowed hard. So, you forgive me? She met his gaze. I do. A pause. But forgiveness isn't an invitation. He nodded slowly, absorbing the meaning. What now? Emily took a breath. Now, you live your life. You show up. You keep doing the work. And maybe one day, when I look at you, I won't see the past. I'll just see my brother. Nathan's eyes shimmered, but he didn't argue. He simply stood, gave her a small, grateful nod, and walked to the door. Before leaving, he turned around. I'll keep showing up. I hope you do, Emily said. Then the door closed behind him. She sat alone for a while, staring at the envelope on the table. She didn't cry. She just felt light. Not healed, not whole, but lighter. And that, she thought, was more than enough for now. Chapter 11. One morning, no one called. For the first time in what felt like years, Emily woke up to silence. Not the heavy kind that follows disappointment, nor the sterile silence of hospital halls, but a still, gentle quiet. The kind that comes when no one is demanding anything, no one is asking for help. No one is calling at 2 a.m. or texting, can you swing by, or leaving voicemails about overdue bills and doctor's appointments. Her phone lay untouched on the nightstand. No missed calls. No family emergencies. Just peace. Mocha stretched at the foot of the bed, letting out a soft meow, reminding her that someone still needed her, but only in the simple, present way a cat does. Emily sat up slowly. For a brief moment, she didn't move further. She just stared out the window, watching early morning sunlight dance across the hardwood floor. Her breath came in slow. Steady rhythm. No guilt. No burden. Just space. She made coffee, letting the scent fill her apartment. She watered her small plants, changed into soft linen clothes, and opened a book she hadn't touched in weeks, The Gifts of Imperfection by Brené Brown. On page 37, she underlined a sentence she hadn't noticed before. When we own our stories, we can write a brave new ending. She smiled faintly, pen still in hand. By noon, she found herself driving to a local farmer's market. It had been years since she'd gone, not because she didn't like it, but because time had never truly felt like hers. Today it did. She strolled past flower stalls, homemade jam stands, and a man playing acoustic guitar near a coffee truck. She bought 2 sunflowers for her kitchen and a small honey jar for her neighbor Mrs. Morales, who had always offered kind smiles and the occasional baked empanada. A vendor recognized her. Hey, you're the nurse from Good Hope, right? Emily blinked. Yes, I am. You helped my mother 2 years ago. I see you. You stayed late when no one else could. The woman beamed, handing her a small lavender sachet for free. Thank you. You were light in a dark time. Emily accepted it, stunned by the memory. Something she had done, quietly, automatically, without expecting anyone to notice. Yet somehow it had stayed with this stranger. She walked away slowly, the sachet clutched in her hand. Maybe she had been seen, just not by the ones she had always tried so hard to please. Later that evening, her phone buzzed. Nathan, I stayed all week. No missed days. The boss said I'm getting a raise. I just wanted you to know. Emily typed a reply. That's good. Keep going. No heart emoji. No overpraise. Just a line of recognition, Simple, clean, and true. Then she opened her email. A message from her manager at the hospital had arrived. An opening's come up for nurse coordinator. You've been recommended. Let's talk. Emily leaned back in her chair, a small rush of disbelief washing over her. For once, she wasn't running after something. Something was finally coming to her. And she was ready. Chapter 12. A visit without tears. It had been 6 weeks since Linda Tran was discharged from the hospital. She now spent most of her days in a recliner by the window, wrapped in a soft shawl, reading romance novels borrowed from the local library. Her health was still fragile, but stable. Daniel cooked simple meals and watered the plants. For once, the Tran house was calm, not joyful. Not vibrant, but calm. Emily visited every Sunday. Never more, never less. She arrived at 10 a.m., stayed exactly 90 minutes, then returned to her own life. No one questioned it anymore. This particular Sunday, the sky was clear and golden. Emily brought cut papaya, brown rice porridge, and 2 small candles from the market. Her mother was sitting in her chair, staring out at the cherry blossom tree. Its petals had begun to fall, carpeting the grass like snow. They go so fast, Linda murmured as Emily walked in. Just when they're most beautiful. That's how seasons work, Emily replied, placing the food on the table. They're not meant to last forever. They didn't speak for a while. The air didn't demand it. Linda turned to her daughter. You're quieter now. Not sad, just still. Emily offered a small smile. I don't have to prove anything anymore. That helps. Her mother nodded. I remember when you were little. Always trying to earn everyone's approval. Straight A's. Cleanest room. Quietest voice. And Nathan could burn the curtains and still get a smile. Linda looked away, ashamed. I don't know why we did that. Emily's voice softened. Because it's what you were taught. And you never stopped to question it. Linda blinked. And now? Now you're here. Still breathing. Still learning. Linda reached for Emily's hand, not as a mother commanding closeness, but as a woman asking permission. Emily let her. Thank you, Linda whispered, for not giving up on us. Emily didn't say, you're welcome. She just squeezed her mother's hand gently, then stood and began unpacking the food. There were no tears. No breakdowns. Just 2 women sharing a meal in the quiet company of change. After lunch, Emily stepped outside to the front yard, taking in the last petals falling from the cherry blossom tree. Her father was kneeling in the garden, planting new bulbs. Hyacinths this time, he said, not looking up. Your mother likes the color. Emily knelt beside him without being asked. She picked up a trowel and began digging next to him. Need help spacing them? She asked. I always do, he muttered, but the corners of his mouth lifted slightly. They worked in silence for a long time. No yelling. No correcting. No expectations. Just a father and daughter, sharing dirt, sunlight, and something like peace. When she left that day, no one clung to her, no one begged her to stay longer. There were no tears. And that, Emily thought as she pulled out of the driveway, was how she knew healing had begun. Not with a dramatic apology, but with a visit where no one cried. Chapter 13. Nathan's first real win. Nathan stood in front of the locker room mirror at Bayline Distribution Center, staring at his reflection like he didn't quite believe what he saw. Steel-toed boots, a sweat-soaked shirt, and grease smudges on his jaw. He looked like someone who worked. Someone who earned things. Someone he barely recognized 6 months ago. He pulled a folded paper out of his back pocket, the official notice from HR, promotion to team lead, effective next Monday. He'd done it. No favors. No shortcuts. No Emily cleaning up behind him. Just hours. Repetition. Showing up when he didn't want to. It wasn't much. A small bump in pay. More responsibility. But it felt like everything. He took a photo of the letter and texted it to Emily, unsure if she'd even reply. They promoted me. I start Monday. I think I'm ready. He waited. Nothing. Then, 10 minutes later, her response buzzed through. That's good, Nathan. Stay ready. Just 5 words. But they meant more than applause ever could. That night, he sat in his tiny rental room, bare walls, second-hand mattress, and a single shelf with a few library books and a picture of their mother at her last birthday, smiling faintly at a slice of mango cake. He remembered how Emily had organized the whole thing, quietly, efficiently. She brought her own plastic tablecloth and even lit candles because the power had flickered twice that day. He remembered eating quickly and leaving early, some excuse about a meeting he never attended. Back then, he didn't even say thank you. Now he whispered it into the silence. Thank you, Em, for not giving up when I gave you every reason to. Later that week, Nathan took the early shift and showed up at 6 a.m. sharp. As team lead, he was now in charge of training new hires and checking shipments. It wasn't glamorous, but for the first time, he was proud of his name on the clipboard. During lunch, his supervisor clapped him on the back. Heard your sister's a nurse, the man said. Figures. You Tran kids got work ethic. Nathan nearly choked on his sandwich. Emily? Yeah, she's kind of the gold standard. Good blood runs strong, the man added. Nathan smiled. More like I'm trying to catch up. The next Sunday, he didn't go to his parents' house. Not because he wasn't welcome, but because he didn't need to prove anything that day. Instead, he bought a small potted plant, a hardy pothos, and took it to Emily's apartment. He didn't ask to come in. He simply left it on her doorstep with a note. For your windowsill. I know it's not much, but I'm learning to give back. He walked away before she opened the door. That evening, Emily found the plant and the note. She stood there for a long moment, one hand resting on the pot, her other crumpling the paper slightly between her fingers. She brought the plant inside and set it next to Mocha, who sniffed it and promptly ignored it. She didn't text him back. She didn't need to. Some things were understood now. Some wins didn't need applause, just quiet recognition. And Nathan, for the first time, had earned one. Chapter 14. A Room of Her Own. Emily didn't think of herself as sentimental. Her apartment was functional, neatly organized shelves, soft lighting, one plant per window, and neutral colors on every wall. There were no childhood photos, no boxes of memorabilia, and no clutter to trip over. But on a quiet Saturday afternoon, something shifted. She found herself standing in the center of the second bedroom, the small space she used for storage, exercise, and the occasional guest. Mocha often napped in the corner by the window, basking in the light. The walls were blank, the closet nearly empty. And suddenly, she thought, this room could be something more. Not because she needed it, but because she wanted it. For herself. The idea grew slowly. She didn't run out to buy anything extravagant. Instead, she made a list. A reading chair, soft curtains, shelves for journals, a rug that felt like home. She browsed second-hand furniture websites, measuring and budgeting. There was no rush, only care. Over the next 2 weeks, the room transformed. She painted the walls a gentle sage green, letting the color wrap around her like calm. She bought a wide, low chair with armrests soft enough to fall asleep in. On the shelves, she placed her old journals, years of private thoughts, quiet grief, and emerging clarity. A framed quote sat at the center. You are allowed to outgrow people, places, and versions of yourself. It wasn't about escape anymore. It was about arrival. On the first night the room was complete, Emily sat down with a cup of tea and watched the sky darken through the window. Mocha curled into a ball on the rug, the hum of distant city life gently fading. She opened her journal to a fresh page and wrote, "This is my room. Not to be shared. Not to be earned. Just mine." A space no one gave me. A space I claimed. The words weren't bitter. They were full. They came from a woman who no longer lived for scraps of validation. She had stopped begging for a seat at someone else's table. She had built her own. That Sunday, when she visited her parents, she brought a tin of green tea and a small tin of cookies. Her mother was sitting up straighter these days, coloring in adult coloring books with soft pencils. Her father had started walking every morning, as per her instruction. There was no drama. No apologies repeated. Just a quiet new normal. Before she left, Linda touched her hand lightly. You look rested. Emily smiled. I am. No explanation followed. No summary of events. Some things didn't need retelling. When she returned home, she walked directly into her new room. She sat in her chair, pulled the blanket over her legs, and whispered into the fading light. Welcome home, Emily. And for the first time in decades, she believed it. Chapter 15. Letters that were never sent. The idea came to Emily one late evening. As she reorganized the top shelf of her closet, she found a worn shoebox tucked behind old winter scarves. It was heavier than she remembered. Inside, letters. Some written. Some started but never finished. Some simply envelopes with no contents at all. They were all addressed the same way. To Mom, when you finally understand. To Dad, if you ever ask why. To Nathan, if he ever changes. To myself, when I forget how far I've come. She sat on the edge of her bed, the box in her lap, heart still. The first letter she opened was dated July 3rd, 2016. Mom, I cooked you dinner last night, and you didn't say a word. I spent 3 hours making your favorite soup, but you just asked if I used the right brand of fish sauce. I wanted to scream, but instead I smiled. Do you know how exhausting it is to smile through erasure? Emily folded it back slowly. She didn't cry. Then came one addressed to her father. From the year she graduated nursing school. You didn't come. That's okay. I told everyone you were busy at work. But I saw the photos you posted with Nathan that day, new car, barbecue, smiling. I was top of my class. I paid every dollar myself. You said nothing. She breathed deeply. That wound had scabbed over, but the scar remained. She flipped through letter after letter, confessions. Suppressed rage, attempts to reclaim her voice in ink when her mouth couldn't speak. And then, near the bottom, she found the last one. It was addressed in her own handwriting, but bolder. Firmer. To the woman I'm becoming. She had never opened it. It was sealed. Her fingers trembled slightly as she broke the flap and unfolded the letter. Asterisk, you are not weak for walking away. You are not cruel for creating boundaries. You are not cold for demanding warmth. One day, you'll sit in a home you built with your own heart. You'll sip tea in a room no one gave you. You'll breathe without guilt. And you'll know. You didn't need to be chosen to matter. You chose yourself. Emily stared at the words for a long time. Then she smiled. Not a half smile. A full, quiet, honest smile. She returned the letters to the box and gently tied it shut with string. She didn't throw them away. She didn't need to. They weren't weights anymore. They were evidence. Proof that she had endured. That she had grown. That she had rewritten the ending of a story others had tried to narrate for her. That night, she lit a candle in her new room, sat by the window, and wrote a new letter. Only this time, she didn't sign it with pain or longing. She signed it simply. Love. Emily. Chapter 16. A quiet celebration. Emily didn't like birthdays. Not because of age, or candles, or the attention, but because, for most of her life, birthdays felt like a reminder of how easily she was forgotten. Growing up, her birthday was always second to Nathan's. He got the parties, the balloons, the extended family visits. Hers was squeezed in between her mother's work schedule and her father's mood. A cake from the clearance shelf. A polite happy birthday said halfway through washing dishes. So as an adult, Emily had learned to keep her birthday to herself. A quiet dinner, a book, a walk. No announcements. No expectations. But this year was different. She didn't plan anything. But things had changed. That morning, she awoke to a small envelope slipped under her door. Her neighbor, Mrs. Morales. Feliz cumpleaños. Querida, I left tamales on your doorstep. You deserve more than candles. Emily smiled and carried the warm package to the kitchen, savoring the homemade flavors as the city came to life outside her window. At 8:14 a.m., her phone buzzed. Nathan, happy birthday, Em. I hope it's a peaceful one. P.S. I remembered without social media. That's gotta count for something. Attached was a photo of a small bracelet he'd made, braided cord with tiny alphabet beads that spelled out strong. He wrote, "Made it in an art class at the shelter. Thought of you." She chuckled softly, then typed, "Thanks, Nate. It does count." At 9:30, her mom called. No long speech. Just this. "I know I didn't make your early birthdays feel special, but I never forgot them. I just didn't know how to show it. I hope you'll let us try now." Emily paused, then said gently, "Trying means more than perfect." She spent the afternoon walking alone through a botanical garden, her steps slow and deliberate. For once, there was no urgency to be anywhere. No one to save. No role to fill. She sat under a flowering dogwood tree and read poetry, something soft and healing. Later, as the sun dipped low, she returned home to find a small box at her door. No name. Inside, a journal with handmade paper. And on the first page, in neat, unfamiliar handwriting, "Every woman who saves herself rewrites history." No signature. No explanation. Just a reminder that she wasn't invisible. That night, she lit a candle, not for wishing, but for gratitude. She cooked a quiet dinner, poured a glass of wine, and sat in her sanctuary room with the lights dimmed, Mocha curled beside her. And for the first time on her birthday, she didn't feel forgotten. She didn't need noise or gifts or grand gestures. She just needed this. Peace, space, and the knowledge that she had rebuilt her life from silence, with no blueprint, just belief. Chapter 17. The dinner that didn't hurt. It was Nathan's idea. A small dinner. Just the four of them. No guests, no big announcements, no awkward toasts. Just a meal cooked from scratch and shared around the same old table that had witnessed too many fights. Too many silences. Emily hesitated when he first suggested it. Her instinct was to say no. But something in his voice, hesitant, hopeful, no longer demanding, made her pause. "We don't have to call it anything," he had said. "Not a reunion. Not an apology. Just a dinner." So she said yes. On the evening of the dinner, Emily arrived at her parents' house right on time, wearing a soft gray sweater and jeans. Comfortable, guarded, but open. The front door was already slightly ajar. She knocked anyway. Linda opened it with flour on her cheek and a faint smile. "You came early." "Right on time," Emily said gently. Daniel was in the kitchen, stirring something in a pot. He didn't look surprised to see her. He simply said, "You'll like this." "Mushroom soup?" "Your favorite." That simple sentence, no fuss, no pretense, meant more than any apology he'd ever tried to form. Nathan was setting the table, humming to himself. A candle flickered in the center, wedged into an old ceramic holder Emily had made in grade school. "It still works," he said, catching her glance. "Barely," she said, lips curving up just slightly. Dinner was quiet, but not the heavy kind. There were no confrontations, no backhanded remarks. No one asked why she hadn't visited more or brought up who gave more or reminded anyone of what was owed. They just ate. Daniel asked about her promotion. Linda asked about Mocha. Nathan asked if she still hiked on Sundays. And Emily answered, without armor. Halfway through the meal, Linda brought out a plate of bonbon, steamed rice cakes Emily had loved as a child but hadn't eaten in years. I had to look up the recipe again, Linda admitted, eyes soft. But I remembered you liked them best when they were warm. Emily took a bite. They weren't perfect. Too sweet, a bit oversteamed. But she smiled anyway. They're good, Mom. Thank you. After dinner, as they washed dishes side by side, Emily and Nathan found themselves alone in the kitchen. Nathan passed her a towel and said quietly, I used to hate that you always cleaned up after everyone. Emily raised an eyebrow. You had a funny way of showing it. He smirked, then turned serious. I didn't know how to be anything but the favorite. I thought that made me strong. Turns out, you were the strong one all along. She dried a plate. You're still figuring it out. That counts. He nodded. So, this didn't suck. No, Emily said. It didn't hurt. And that was a first. That night, as she drove home, the sky was deep blue and still. She didn't feel drained. She didn't replay every sentence in her head. She didn't wonder if she had said too much or too little. She felt full. Not from food. From the absence of pain. A dinner that didn't hurt. It was a small miracle. But in Emily's world, that was more than enough. Chapter 18. Since when do you grow flowers? She asked gently. Daniel looked up, blinking in the sunlight. Your mother likes the smell. He returned to pressing soil around the stems, fingers careful. Movements slow. Emily knelt beside him without waiting for an invitation. She picked up the small trowel and began helping him tamp down the earth. You were always strict about the rows being even, she said. Still am, he replied. A pause. The lavender bent slightly under a gust of breeze. Then, Daniel spoke again quietly. I never thought you'd come back here. To this house. To us. Emily didn't look up. I didn't come back. I just stopped running. He nodded, eyes still on the soil. That's fair. They worked in silence for a while. Then he reached behind him, pulled out a small seed packet, and handed it to her. Blue flax, he said. It blooms fast. Soft. Might suit the edge of the yard. She turned the packet over in her hands. You want me to plant something? It's your garden too now, isn't it? Emily hesitated, then smiled. Maybe. They planted side by side until the sun sank low. Birds darted overhead. The garden smelled of earth and future. As she washed her hands at the outdoor faucet, Daniel dried his with an old rag and said, You know, I didn't say it before, but I see it now. She turned. See what? The strength. The way you carried everything when we didn't. I thought you were just tough. Cold, even. But it was more than that. Emily let the water run for a few seconds before turning off the tap. It wasn't coldness. It was survival. Daniel nodded. I'm sorry you had to survive us. That line stayed with her. More than the seeds. More than the lavender. Because this time, it didn't come with denial. It came with dirt under fingernails and truth in a man's voice who had finally stopped pretending to know better. That night, Emily stood by the window in her apartment, looking at the small pot of blue flax she'd taken home, waiting to be planted when the weather softened. Her father had handed her seeds. Not flowers. Not apologies wrapped in ribbons. Just seeds. And that was enough. Because it meant he was trying to grow too. Chapter 19. The Sister Who Chose Silence. Emily hadn't spoken to her cousin Mai in almost 4 years. They had grown up more like sisters than cousins, sleepovers, shared clothes, whispered secrets under bedsheets long past midnight. But when Emily's family began to fracture, Mai quietly pulled away. No arguments. No betrayal. Just absence. It started with missed calls. Then unread messages. Then silence. Emily never chased her. She was too busy patching the cracks in her own foundation to ask why someone had chosen to stop being her witness. But the universe has a strange way of folding old pages open. It happened at a hospital fundraising event. Emily had reluctantly agreed to attend as part of her new nurse coordinator role. She wore a navy dress, heels she hadn't dusted off in 2 years, and a name tag that made her feel oddly visible. The room was filled with strangers in suits and carefully calculated smiles. And then, Emily? She turned. I stood in front of her, hair longer now. A soft scarf wrapped around her neck. She looked almost the same, just a bit more grown, more composed, like someone who had spent years learning how to hide her discomfort. Emily blinked, unsure if she should smile or walk away. I beat her to it. You look good. So do you. An awkward pause. I didn't know you worked here, I added, holding a glass of sparkling water. I didn't know you still lived in San Jose, Emily replied. Another silence. This one heavier. Can we talk? I finally asked. Really talk? Emily didn't answer with words. She just nodded and led them outside to a quiet corner bench under string lights. I spoke first. I should have said something. Years ago, when things got bad. Why didn't you? Emily asked, not accusing, just curious. I looked down at her hands. Because I saw what they were doing to you. How they favored Nathan. How they made you the invisible one. And I didn't know how to stand up without feeling like I was betraying my own aunt and uncle. So instead of standing up, I left. Emily nodded, eyes steady. You didn't owe me action. Some relationships aren't healed through dissection, but through gentle return. Before parting, I reached into her bag and handed Emily a small envelope. I wrote this 2 years ago. Never had the courage to send it. Emily slipped it into her purse. I'll read it when I'm ready. Take your time, I said. I'm not disappearing again. They smiled, not the wide kind, but the soft, hesitant kind you wear when rebuilding something once lost. That night, Emily placed the envelope on her windowsill beside the pot of blue flax her father had given her. 2 offerings from people who had once chosen distance, and now were learning the language of return. Chapter 20. The life she didn't ask permission for. There was a time when Emily lived by other people's rhythms. She said yes when she meant no. She gave time she didn't have. She bit her tongue so others could breathe easier. She made herself smaller, quieter, easier to love, just to keep peace that was never really hers to hold. But not anymore. One crisp Sunday morning, Emily stood in front of a red brick building tucked into a quiet corner of downtown San Jose. Above the door, in hand-painted lettering, read, "The quiet space, healing through writing." It was hers. Not inherited. Not handed over. Not the product of someone else's vision. Her own, with savings from her promotion. Support from a grant she applied for silently while everyone assumed she'd never leave the hospital, and guidance from a mentor who once told her, "You don't have to stay where you began." She opened the city's first writing and reflection studio specifically for women who had lived through family trauma, grief, and invisibility. A space to write, to gather, to exhale, and to stop apologizing for needing room. Inside, the studio was warm and full of light. Wooden tables, mismatched chairs, shelves lined with donated books. And in the back, a soft reading corner where lavender oil diffused into the air. Emily placed a small card on the welcome table. It read, "You are allowed to exist loudly, gently, honestly. You are not too much. You are finally enough." She still worked at the hospital part-time. She still visited her parents on Sundays. Nathan still texted every week with updates about work, budget goals, and the cat he eventually adopted and named Shadow in honor of his old self. Her mother had taken up watercolor painting. Her father, gardening classes. Mike came to the studio's first journaling circle. No one was perfect, but no one was pretending anymore either. That night, Emily walked home alone beneath the early spring sky, her boots tapping gently against the sidewalk. She stopped by a florist still open on the corner and picked out 3 daffodils. The shopkeeper asked if it was a gift. Emily smiled and shook her head. No, just for me. Back in her apartment, she placed the flowers in a glass bottle beside the windowsill, next to the blue flax that had finally bloomed. And the old bracelet Nathan had mailed her with no return address. She poured herself a cup of chamomile tea, wrapped a shawl over her shoulders, and opened her journal to a fresh page. At the top, she wrote, "I built this life, not from revenge, not from regret, but from quiet, steady choice. I no longer wait for love to be handed to me. I carry it. I become it. I give it with boundaries." Asterisk, asterisk. She closed the journal, turned out the light, and let the silence hold her. A silence she no longer feared. A silence that finally belonged to her. Chapter 1.